So, Rick, why is that woman walking on your back? This is the latest massage technique. So who's the guy in the dark hair and mustache? Yeah, that's me from 1990. The entire month of October, we're going to be looking back at ghost towns. Tonight, we're going to show you one from the 1990s. But later in the month, we're going to take you to Scottsburg, to Pacific City, even a place called Idiotville. I'm not dead. That sounds like something interesting. I don't think you can live in Oregon and not somehow have a love affair with lighthouses. There are lots and lots of books about lighthouses. I have a friend named Jim Gibbs. He wrote a number of books about lighthouses. He was considered the expert on lighthouses up and down the West Coast. Jim actually spent time on a lighthouse like this called Tillamook Head. Then he built his own lighthouse just south of Yachats. Jim died in 2010. But over my years at KEZI, I think I did 2 or 3 stories on Jim. I found one recently, thanks to the Archives Department over at the University of Oregon. I want to show that story to you because every time I drive south of Yachats and I look over, I still see Jim's light.
On tonight's Oregon People segment, a trip to the coast. Many of us are fascinated by lighthouses. Have you ever driven by that lighthouse near Yachats? It looks like it's part of a man's home. Well, it is. But it's also a working, registered lighthouse. Watch.
This was my dream from the time I was a young man, from the time we first came down to the coast in the 1920s, that someday I would have my little so-called castle on the edge of the Oregon shores.
Here on the cleft of the rock, nestled in the shadow of Cape Perpetua, 71-year-old Jim Gibbs found a dark spot to build what has become a light for many. He noticed on some old maps that Cape Perpetua was earmarked for a lighthouse. The government never built it, so Gibbs did it himself.
Lighthouses have always been kind of a homing pigeon for the seafarer, so to speak, and they have a special purpose, and they mean something different to everybody. A lighthouse is kind of a human symbol of the light shining always the brightest in the darkest places.
The rotating light is officially registered with the Coast Guard and must be lit from sunset to sunrise every day of the year.
It's kind of a symbol in a way because lighthouses are in the twilight of age to navigation, so to speak, in this high-tech electronic age in which we live. But they still have a warmth, and they still are very much admired by the general public. And I think there'll always be lighthouses, even though their importance has been reduced.
Gibbs knows how important lighthouses were to seafarers of the past. In 1945 and 46, he was a lighthouse keeper on one of the most lonely, isolated lighthouses in the country, Tillamook Rock near Seaside.
It was an experience all of its own because it was suddenly like going to a prison. In fact, when I was out there, it was called the Little Alcatraz of Oregon. And in later years, news people dubbed the name Terrible Tilly.
To Jim, Tilly was not all that terrible. In fact, he learned to love her and what she stood for. You can see by his home that this maritime writer never has been able to break off his love affair with the sea.
Well, it's kind of like having old friends. I mean, each one of them means something personally to you, and they all have a story connected with them. And the nice thing about nautical things, they never talk back to you. You can just reminisce with them.
Gibbs spends a lot of time reminiscing with the old 18th and 19th century technology, most of it obsolete. But he still salvages pieces like these old lighthouse lenses.
These all have hand-ground polished glass, And each one has a different configuration because they all refract and reflect into one central band.
Each one spent many years guiding ships along the rocky Pacific coastline. Reason enough for Gibbs to save it, reason enough for people to remember. Gibbs spent his whole life writing about the sea. Not a bad job writing about something you love so much, especially when it's as powerful as the ocean. The sea is filled with mystery and intrigue for this man. The lighthouse and the rock it's built on don't stop the storms from beating the coastline, but they do provide protection, security, and a solid foundation for many, including Jim Gibbs. Maybe that's why he calls this place his Cleft of the Rock.
Cleft of the Rock comes from a passage in the Bible in Exodus, which tells about Moses being hid in the cleft of the rock when God passed by. It's also from the hymn, which is, "He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock." I just give all the credit to the good Lord because I've had a blessed life, so to speak, and it's kind of terminated in exactly what I had planned from the beginning, and He allowed it to be.
So the next time you drive along Highway 101 south of Yachats and you are admiring that light and being warmed by the romance lighthouses stir in all of us, you might remember Jim Gibbs for this very special gift he's given all of us. And tomorrow night, two fascinating women. We were introduced to them while on a trip to Brownsville, and we were so impressed with what they did and what they had to say that we ended up doing a story on them. So
I'd ask you what that is,
tomorrow.
but it's a surprise.
It's a tease. We can't tell until tomorrow.
We're here at the University of Oregon Archives to talk to Elizabeth Peterson about this new collection that they received from KEZI. And I got to show you something real quick. These books, these were the Bibles when I was back in the day at KEZI. We'd run into the back room and we would be going through these to find the video for stories that we'd put on the air. So, you know, in some ways, Elizabeth, what's fun for me is this is kind of like my life, and you guys have it, and it's safe. You know, I'll always be in the archives here. Tell me, first of all, how did you get this KEZI collection?
Scott Chambers from Chambers Communications. I believe he approached the dean of the School of Journalism about gifting the collection to the university. And in the library, this is what we do. We take in primary source collections and organize them and make them accessible and preserve them forever. So fortunately, he talked to Dean Deb Carver, Dean of the Libraries, and through all these connections, brought the gift into the libraries. And so it will certainly be available to everybody, including the students and faculty in the School of Journalism. That's how the gift got to us.
So in terms of nationwide, local news content like this, historical records of local news, even though it's only 10 or 20 or 50 years old, we're losing them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a very unique kind of collection. I mean, not just unique for the content because it's regional news and a medium-sized media market, but there are very few collections like this that still exist and that have this kind of chronological scope and are this intact. There's really, I know of fewer than 10 that still exist around the country. So
the Chambers doing this was pretty foresightful.
Oh yes, especially since they've since sold the business. I'm so grateful that Scott Chambers and his siblings had the foresight to give us the rights to the material, which rarely happens at all, where the repository gets the copyright to the material, because it allows us to make this freely available to whoever needs it. We try to recoup our costs through use fees just for our staff time and transfer costs, but we don't have to then pay a rights holder in addition to that, or the user doesn't have to track down a rights holder. So yes, the vision that he had in ensuring the safety of this amazing legacy of his mother, Carolyn Chambers, and his family is such a benefit to the entire state and really to researchers everywhere, I like to think.
Hi, I'm Emma,
I am Amelia Abel.
and she is from the Look Me in the Eye campaign. Amelia, have you ever been to Ranchito Grill?
I have not. Never
It is
heard of it.
so good. Oh, it's easy to find. Mohawk and Olympic. It's right there.
Yeah.
Delicious fajitas. I love the margaritas, though Rick cuts me off a little too fast for my liking.
Ooh.
But we do have a drawing that you can enter. Free, 2 dinners for free, and it's really easy. You just look for the Rick Dancer sign, you write your the bullet points, the regular information, your name, your phone number, how we get a hold of you really, and you could win dinner for 2 at Ranchito Grill. We do have a winner right now. Do you want to announce the winner? I'll do the drum. Ready? You want to do the, okay.
Yeah. Her name is Kat Moscow.
Kat Mogstad, congratulations. 2 dinners at Ranchito Grill, all yours.
When the phone rings and your doctor informs you you have cancer, life forever changes. I work in the television video production industry. I do online videos and decided, after a lot of thinking, to make my cancer very public.
So here's the thing. I have cancer. Prostate cancer. And I'm just shocked, just kind of stunned and numb and scared and afraid.
My diagnosis came in January of 2010.
I didn't want to die, but I also, to be honest, I didn't want to lose my ability to have an erection. I mean, that's a big concern for a guy.
I'm not afraid this is going to kill me. Prostate cancer is really treatable. I'm afraid of the process. I just don't want to do it. I don't want to live with cancer.
In my late 40s, my PSA jumped. At first, the PSA was 2, then 4, and that's when the biopsies began. It took 5 years and 5 biopsies to find cancer. My PSA was hovering at 20 when the cancer was discovered.
That was the horrible process. We felt so alone while we were looking for a treatment. And I remember we'd go to doctor appointment after doctor appointment, and every time we'd come out, we just sit there and cry all the way home.
The internet was even worse. The most talked about treatments always came with a host of possible side effects. Your temptation is to move quickly. You hear cancer and just want to get it out of your body. I resisted the temptation and took several months finding the treatment that was right for me, and I'm so glad I did. I wish in those early days we'd had a team of specialists like those at the Willamette Valley Cancer Institute to talk with us about all the options, not just the usual treatments.
So you can't rely on friends and relatives or other men in your life who've had prostate cancer and do what they did. You really have to go through this process yourself and figure out what's the best treatment for you, or whether you really want to get treated at all at this point.
Cancer did change my life, but not in the ways I thought it would. We chose a treatment that worked for us. Yes, this is not just your decision. Your wife needs to be part of that process. I think attitude is a huge part of cancer treatment, survival, and moving on. I didn't have to fight cancer. I had to fight Rick Dancer, me. Surviving cancer did have lasting effects on our lives. We discovered how much stronger we are and how short time really is when you think about it. We now do triathlons, our first half marathon. We cycle Oregon and try things we never dreamed of trying before. I'm not trying to glamorize cancer. There is nothing beautiful about it. But cancer let me stare death in the face and then walk away. There is something powerful in the gift of survival.
Guys, the best advice I can give after going through this process is don't rush into anything. First of all, determine whether you need to be treated with your different doctors that you're going to go visit. If you do decide on treatment, look at the side effects and make sure you're comfortable with what's going to happen or what could happen. And then remember, you will get through this.
Life is good now. My PSA is down to 0 for the first time in a decade. My side effects from the treatment are minimal. I look back at this video and remember that day like it was yesterday.
That's kind of where we're at. So keep praying, and I thank you. It'll get better. It'll get better. It'll get better.
I was right. It is getting much better.
dream started more than 70 years ago. Granddad and his wife saved their pennies to buy this piece of land near Junction City. 3 generations later, with a 4th starting to work and a 5th not far behind, the same family, much bigger these days, still runs the Lockmead Farms. A single-source dairy where every drop of precious milk comes from the same herd. Most milk producers pull from a pool of milk from cows and dairies galore. They think it's normal to truck the milk 60 miles or more to a processing plant. At Lockmead Farms, we wouldn't think of doing that with our milk products. 60 miles is simply too long and too far. Our dairy is only 4 miles from our plant. What we milk on Monday is at our Dairy Mart stores Tuesday night. At Lockmead Farms, that's simply the way it's done. Isn't it time you try Lockmead Farm products? You will find them at your neighborhood Dairy Mart store, the home of Lockmead Farms, or in your local natural food store.
In an era where newspapers are struggling and a lot of larger papers are dying, we are doing well because we tend to cover things local and we offer news that people can't get anywhere else. That's our model, is covering local news and sports and anything to do with the community. Journalism and newspapers and other media sources is important because we have the training. Most of the people I employ have gone to college and studied journalism, and so what we offer is a source of news that can be trusted. It's in an era where everybody's trying to be the first to get the news out. We actually do some research and talk to the sources and get the story and all the details behind the story.
So this is Ashiatsu. Ashi means foot, Atsu means pressure in, I believe, Japanese. They've been doing different kinds of foot massage for years and years, but Ashiatsu, and the way that I learned it, was developed in the late 90s, I believe, by Ruthie Hardy. And what I do is use my feet, and I use the bars up above the table for my balance. Well, I've been doing massage for almost 16 years, and I've done a lot of deep tissue massage over the years, and with my forearms, I can give about 40 pounds of pressure. This way, I can give up to 140 plus or minus a few pounds of pressure. And it's a broader pressure, of course, because it's using my whole foot.
Her name is Vicki Anderson. She likes to sew. She makes rugs for people. She vacationed in Spain. She would love to tell you about her trip and about her life. Vicki has a lot to offer. All you have to do is acknowledge her. To support this effort and learn more, go to lookmeintheeye.org. It's not the alarm that gets you out on the trail every day. It's your heart, whispering, "Get out of bed, this is your day." Your legs are tired. Your body begs you not to do it. But going back is not an option. This race is against your toughest opponent. This race is against you. You give it your all and will be back tomorrow to do it all over again. And when you finish, because you're never really done, only one thing can restore what was taken and what you gave. Lockmead reduced fat or non-fat chocolate milk. Recovery doesn't get any better than this. we've got something really exciting for you the whole month of October. We're going to take you back and show you some ghost towns all over the state of Oregon. We want to begin with a story we showed a couple of months ago from way back in 1990 when we went to Eastern Oregon. We'll show you that, and then a little bit later in the show, I'm going to give you a little tease at a place called Idiotville. Yes, there is an Idiotville. So sit back and enjoy the history.
I've always had a fascination with ghost towns, and over the years when I worked in television news, I think I did 3 or 4 series on Oregon ghost towns. The first one was with the guy who's shooting this right now, Bill Getz. We started at Shaniko and worked our way east, and we called it Lost and Found Oregon Ghost Towns. We now have a deal we've worked out with the University of Oregon, with the Archives Department and the libraries and the special collections, and we're going to be airing some of those old stories we did on KEZI. So we thought, what better place to start than with one of our favorites. So here's the beginning of Lost and Found Oregon Ghost Towns.
Well, the words are somehow irresistible. Ghost town.
Somehow the sound of it beckons us, the ghost town. The words promise a trip into the shadowy world of the Old West. It's not just the tourists who are finding it hard to stay away. A new generation is turning to these relics of the past in search of a future in a simpler world. There are more than 40 ghost towns in Oregon. For the next 3 nights, photographer Bill Getz and I will take you on a visit to 6 of these lonely towns. They stand in mute testimony to pioneer courage, hardship, and sometimes broken dreams. It's almost as if the weathered boards of empty buildings are too stubborn to admit they've been abandoned. And in your mind's eye, it's not too hard to see the buckboards on the streets or hear the music from the old dance hall. We know it wasn't really that romantic back in the days of the early settlers. You worked hard and got little for it. But as Jerry Myers remembers, life was simpler. His kinfolk homesteaded near Sumter in the Blue Mountains of Eastern Oregon way back in 1878. And he thinks simplicity is the magnet that attracts visitors to these parts.
They're looking for the atmosphere. You know, they read the history is a real big thing now. And people come in here and kind of feel it, touch it, see it. Because in those days, we worked hard for what we had, and we enjoyed what we had to the ultimate. We've just kind of gotten away from that, and I think people are really looking to get back to that. They'd like to get a little bit closer to things.
Originally, though, it was gold fever, timber, wool, and the railroad that brought dreamers to live in these isolated valleys and hillsides. Looking at what's left of some of these towns, this was born. You can hardly believe that at one time several thousand people lived here. Saloons, hotels, stores, and homes covered the hillside just below the old mines. The old-timers say the pioneers found what they were looking for. Times were good, at least for a while. But eventually the gold was too costly to mine. The railroads pulled up and relocated, and there was no way to ship the timber or the wool. The glitter in places like granite was beginning to fade. Now it's solitude that attracts residents. Tony Thompson runs the Granite General Store.
But you have to be hardy. You have to be willing to work hard. You pay a price for living up here. It's hard economically. It's hard physically. I mean, just keeping your house in shape, going through the winters we go through. Just all those things, you know, you work at it. You don't just come up here and kick back and, oh, well, no problem, I'll just take it easy. doesn't happen.
When the railroad pulled out of Shannaco, the townsfolk walked away, leaving the city to the tumbleweeds and the sun and the wind. The outside world kept changing. Shannaco just waited, slowly becoming a museum of our past, its legacy as a ghost town starting to take shape. But a ghost town doesn't have to be old to capture our attention. There's the unconventional ghost town of Rajneeshpuram. 5 years ago, thousands of people lived and worked here for the glory of their guru. Now an insurance company owns the town, but it's home to only a caretaker and his family. All of these ghost towns are a little sad, lonely outposts of our past. But they're no longer just monuments to bad times and broken dreams. The new pioneers have found them and are opening them back up for all of us. So if you're in the market for a video, Rick Dancer Media Services, we create long format videos, shorter videos, YouTube videos, website videos. What we specialize in is telling your story, and we do it with heart, we do it with passion. Sometimes we do it and make it just a little wacky. It's whatever you want. But give us a call to find out more about our services and what we offer. My phone number is right here on the screen, 541-232-3143, or go to rickdancer.com or Rick Dancer TV. Halfway between Forest Grove and Tillamook, over the river, down a logging road, and just this side of a bridge, was a logging camp called Idiotville. It's hard to find someone willing to help you search for this place.
My disclaimer is that I or none of my family have ever lived in Idiotville.
So this is not one of those places that you're from?
No.
Oh, lots of old-timers have heard about it. You know how that goes. It's always someone else. Why Idiotville? So many stories.
They had this camp, and during the 46 fire, decided that they would not evacuate. And so from then on, they said they referred to it as Idiotville because they're going to stay here and burn up.
Or there's this tale.
Another one is that somebody found gold, and there was a gold rush, a minor gold rush, and of course they found out there was no gold here, and so anybody that responded to that was called an idiot, and their camp was Idiotville.
You can see what might have been a road or something like that. Idiotville was way out in the middle of nothing. Oh, there is a creek, named after the town,